Hello to my wonderful listeners. We are back with another episode of McFly's Movie House with me, Marta McFly. And for today's episode, we have another one of those roundup episodes. This time we're going to be chatting favorite directorial debuts. And for this episode, perhaps I'm cheating a little bit, but that's fine. We're going to be covering favorite directorial feature debuts, just to make things a pinch easier. And I love looking at a filmmaker's early work because you really get to see a progression, especially if you're familiar with what a certain director did later. And you usually get to see pockets of what's to come with this early work. And I just find all of that so exciting. So to help me out today, I invited a good friend of mine to come on the pod. He is a LA-based filmmaker and writer, currently primarily working in music videos, but he always keeps busy. He's aspiring to write and direct feature films as well. It is my absolute pleasure to have Declan Adams on McFly's Movie House. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Good. How's it going? Been a little while.
I'm good. It's been a minute. Yeah, you gotta come visit me in town soon.
Yep, next month.
Yay! Oh, I'm so excited. And
Yes.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast today as well. But before we get started and I give you a breakdown of what we're doing, can you share with all of us what you've watched recently and what you suggest we check out? New, old, whatever you want.
Yeah, I've been doing a pretty good job of keeping up with like all the most recent theater releases. I've seen like Furiosa. I went to go see the new Quiet Place. Just watched Maxine last night.
Ooh, how was
Um
Maxine? I'm
Maxine
hearing.
was great. I highly recommend. I thought it was really fun.
Oh,
Oh, you didn't like it?
wow. No, I
With
haven't
Young?
seen it yet, but like I
Oh.
online I see people are either like really
Uh
liking it or they're hating it.
I feel
Like
like it's one of
watch.
those things that people are just gonna hate on for the sake of hating on it. It's got like so
Mhm.
much clout and so much attention. But I don't know. To be honest, I didn't love X. I thought it was fine. I saw Pearl pretty late because I just wasn't terribly excited about it, and I was kind of like shocked by how much better it was than X, at least in my
Yeah.
opinion. And then yeah, I feel like Maxine's just kind of a continuation of like they've really found their groove. A lot of fun.
Interesting.
It's I mean that's like the best way to describe it. Honestly, it's just like a really fun movie. So I recommend that. What else? I saw Late Night with the Devil,
Oh,
and
okay. Yeah,
I
yeah,
enjoyed
yeah.
that one quite a bit.
Hmm.
Just as far as like recommendations go, I saw Harmony
Hmm.
Korine's new movie. I think we talked about
Oh,
that, but
aggro
I wouldn't
drift.
I wouldn't necessarily regret that one, but or recommend that one. But yeah,
Yeah, I have feelings about that one. I don't know. I understand what he was going for. I really, really do. Like commentary on like, I guess, where Hollywood's going. But as for an
Florida.
execution, I don't know. I see that more as an art piece. Like I didn't even feel comfortable rating that one because I was like, with this isn't a movie. This is like neon GTA or
Yeah,
infrared
pretty much.
GTA.
Yeah, pretty
So
much. Yeah, it was. I mean, yeah.
it
Anyways,
is what it is. Anyways,
yeah,
well, for segue for today's
segue.
episode, we're obviously chatting about our favorite directorial feature debuts. But I'm curious what you look for in a favorite, or if there's any criteria that you have. Because for me, my favorite directorial debuts are movies that I guess challenge regular cinema conventions or movie going experiences, and they try to do something new. And obviously, that's not the case all of the time. Like sometimes someone just makes a banger of a first movie, but for me, I picked stuff that was truly unique for the time it came out. So, yeah, what's your criteria, or if you have any?
Yeah, so I generally just start with directors that I like, obviously, and kind of like work my way back. Like, what is the first thing that this person did? If like they already have like their style established, I'm like, where did this come from? How did they start? How did it like mature to this place where I'm like seeing their most recent work? I'm like, whoa, this is crazy. So yeah, I think I agree with you. I think that the best ones, even among like, there's certain directors that their first movies weren't great, or
Hmm.
they weren't anything close to kind of like what they'd end up making. But the things that I kind of settled on were things that I thought were very like challenging, like ambitious and different. Maybe it's kind of tough to like speak to the context when a lot of these things came out because I just like wasn't even born for a lot of them. But I think that yeah, just basically things that were like that were gutsy, and
Hmm.
they set out with kind of they set out to challenge themselves, and they like accomplished that, and then obviously their careers kind of flourished from there. But that's kind of like what I found myself kind of coming back to.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's similar to me. It makes me really curious how much crossover we're going to have. I feel
Yeah,
like I
I'm also
know a
curious.
few of yours,
Yeah,
maybe,
well,
or
I
at least
actually had a
one.
pretty long list that I cut down a couple times, mostly because they were just like things or specific movies or directors that I wanted to talk about, but I'm also curious.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, so for today's breakdown of what we're doing, it's going to be super easy. We're just going to go back and forth and discuss our 5 favorite picks. They don't have to be ranked unless you want them to be. I didn't. Explain why we like them. And then if we have time for honorable mentions at the end, we can toss those out too. I think we will have time. But how does that sound?
sounds great.
Amazing. Well, I'll start us off. I'm going to go with a animated classic, Satoshi Kon's Perfect Blue from 1997. I absolutely adore this film. I think it's crazy that this was Kon's first feature film debut because it's just influenced so many filmmakers to come. It's such a unique idea for the time as well. The movie follows Mima. She's a J-pop idol and part of a band called Cham, I think it is, all in capital letters. But Mima wants to break out of her pop idol mold, let's call it, and carve out a new path as an actress. And she's struggling to change her careers. She's nervous of failure. And as all this is happening, her former idol self basically starts haunting her. And she gets these visions. Things get even more weird when she starts getting death threats. And she finds a blog that essentially tracks everything about her life. So, of course, she's mentally not doing well with all the news. And she's wrapped in this paranoia. And she starts being able to not being able to differentiate what's real and what isn't. And yeah, it's just a trip of a film. I heard Roger Corman famously said after watching it that it felt like if Alfred Hitchcock partnered with Walt Disney, they'd make a movie like this, which
Yeah,
I find so hilarious. But yeah, it really set the stage for what he would do. Cohn, I mean, he became known for blending dreams with reality in his films. He also focused on advances in technology, and he'd explore all of this with Paprika, another fantastic film. And it's such a shame that he passed away in 2010. It was pancreatic cancer, I think, because he only had a chance to do 4 feature films, and his movies left such an impact on the community. Notably, Aronofsky heavily borrowed from Perfect Blue, both visually and Requiem for
Christopher
a
Nolan.
Dream. Christopher Nolan as well. It's just everywhere, right? So, yeah, I think he's incredible and his movies definitely should be talked about. I assume you've seen Perfect Blue, right?
Yeah, of course. I was just gonna say that's a great pick. I was looking at like maybe covering a Miyazaki thing, but like honestly, yeah, as far as animation goes, that's like such a strong debut. I think that what he did with Perfect Blue and like Paprika as well, but generally speaking, like he created so much visual
Yes.
language that like I mean obviously yeah, like people were inspired by it to the point that they're like literally taking frames and like concepts directly from his work, but like just the nature of it being animation, like you can do anything with animation, and to not only execute these visuals in such a like literally groundbreaking way, but also to have them like that isn't the only flex. Like every part of that kind of plays into like whatever thematically is going on and like enhances kind of the story and the themes.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. He's all his movies are crazy, and I have no idea how you come up with concepts like that and blend things like the way he did. It was like
I
it was insane.
know. It's also just if you think about it, came out in 97, it feels like it just predicted so much about our culture too. Like she has these like crazy fans and this blog that's like all about her life, which kind of reminds me of like social media and influencers now and how people know everything about their lives and like kind of pick it apart online. So yeah, that's my first
Totally.
pick.
Yeah, that era is so ripe for like I wouldn't necessarily call it like a speculative sci-fi, but just in the way that like the internet was starting to come around and like all
Yes.
these like the kind of like change into a digital world. I think I think people like Satoshi who like could really lock in on like what actually might happen or what the they created such interesting worlds that yeah, they do hold up today because these guys are they're crazy. They I don't know how they think like that, but
I
um
know.
yeah.
It's incredible. I love him. Oh, I'm so glad you're a fan.
Oh,
But
it's
what's your
amazing.
first
Yeah.
pick?
My first pick, I wanted to shout out Canadian director, one of my favorite movies I've
Ooh.
seen this year, In a Violent Nature.
Oh, I've never even heard of that. Who's
Oh,
that by?
really? So it's kind of like got some buzz, I think, in like festivals and
Yeah.
whatever. I think it had like a limited theatrical release, but it's a slasher movie
Okay.
that basically follows the perspective of the killer. as opposed to like
Oh.
being a kind of like typical, here's a bunch of kids who like go to whatever, some cabin. I mean, it is that, but
Oh, yeah, it's on my watch list. Sorry, go on. But yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah, I
it's,
have heard of
yeah.
this.
So, I mean, the concept's pretty straightforward. And I think that like going into it as someone who watches like a lot of horror movies, and I mean, like it's a genre that's been done like a million different ways and a million different
Mhm.
times, but it's like a very kind of simple concept. And I wasn't sure if it would like work because it's like, okay, well, where's like the tension going to come from? But it was actually, I thought like one of the best horror movies I've seen in a long time. Definitely one of the best slashers, just because of how different it was. And it just like it had this quality to it where the tension, it's not like you're waiting for something that's away from you and you're like kind of as a viewer you have these like expectations of like, oh, someone's going to walk away and they're going to get killed. But when you see how that scene plays out from the other side, and it's like the way the killer is, he's so patient, and the movie's actually like very calming to watch. Like the atmosphere, it's very very quiet. It's just like a lot of bird song and like, wind through the trees, and it's just like you never see the killer's face. It's just like mostly on his back, and he's just like walking through these like beautiful shots of the woods, and eventually he'll come across like some whatever, these kids camping out in the woods, and like it's almost like the movie's happening away from you because you're over here and they're on the other side of the lake, and you're hearing them like have this dialogue, and they're going off. It's like,
Oh,
okay,
I
now they're gonna
see.
split off, and like now he's gonna like find his chance to do this. So the tension's not really like it's not really like you're cheering for them to live. It's like it's just kind of like I just felt like transfixed. It was like this curiosity and this like, just like what is gonna happen. And then like also the kills in the movie are insane. Like some of the most
Oh.
violent, gory deaths I've seen in a long time. Like creative. Like how the fuck did you like where is this coming from? So yeah, and that's a Canadian filmmaker as well. So I just wanted to shout him out. He technically had another feature, but it was ABC's of Death 2, which had multiple directors, which I
Oh,
think
yeah,
kind of
yeah,
counts
yeah.
as a short. It's not like his. So that was the only sketchy one I had on the list.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was kind of like very shocked by how much I enjoyed it. I thought it would be kind of like corny, maybe slightly interesting, but it was a very very good movie.
That shot you're explaining, so sorry, I'm just like focusing in on that. I'm trying to imagine it because it seems really cool. Because usually with slashers, with like the whole camping thing, it's like a POV of the killer really close to the people that he's trying to kill. But the way you're describing it, he was across a lake, so it's from afar that you're watching these
Yeah,
kids.
so like that's the other thing. I actually think the movie and like the dialogue, again away from the character, was pretty
Mm-hmm.
well written. It felt like, it was kind of fresh and it was like believable. It's not
Mm-hmm.
like you're spending too much time with the characters, but like, and the dynamics aren't like super forced of like, here's the job. I mean, it's not like corny, basically, is what
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to say. But it's just interesting. It's like a very voyeuristic movie.
Ooh, I like that.
And yeah, it's like it's all just like in the distance, out of focus. You hear it kind of like some of the dialogue speckled in through like the atmosphere that's like already created. But yeah, like very little music. It feels like you're there. It's very like immersive. So
Cool.
that one was kind of a sleeper for me that yeah, you should definitely check out. I would love to talk about it more with you sometime, but
Nice. Yeah, I will
yeah.
absolutely check that out. I don't even know how that ended up on my watch list. Honestly, my watch list is like pushing 2000 movies at this point. So like
Yeah.
there's stuff on there that I'm like, "Oof, maybe I added this, maybe I added it in my sleep. Like I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, if it's on my watch list, I'll absolutely check it out. But okay, let's move along. Number two, I'm gonna go with Usman Sembene's Black Girl from 1966. I think this is required viewing and just such a phenomenal, albeit heartbreaking watch. Simbene was a highly acclaimed writer in Senegal before he became a filmmaker, and he did two short films in 1963 and 1964 before releasing his feature debut, this one. And yeah, Black Girl was based on one of his own short stories. It's also notable for being the first feature film ever released by a sub Saharan African director. And it was internationally acclaimed. It really started to bring attention to African cinema. And it led to the release of Manjabi in 1968, which is another fantastic film, by the way. It was also the first film in Sembene's native language, Wolof. But yeah, so that's a big deal as well. But before I explain this, have you seen Black Girl, Declan?
No, I haven't. I don't know if I've even heard of it. It sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's on the Criterion channel. It's really short. I think it's under, or no, it's exactly an hour, I think. But yeah, so the movie introduces us to Duana, a young woman from Dakar. She moves to France to work for this wealthy French couple, and she's so excited by this change to be in this bustling country. And yet, when she gets there, she's hit with just this like harsh reality of being so incredibly alienated. And she has to constantly work for these people that treat her so poorly. The apartment that she's in essentially becomes a prison. And this all just acts as a critique on this still very apparent colonial mindset at the time. Because remember, this came out after the process of Senegal's decolonization. And it's a difficult film to watch. It's so hard to see this like subtle humiliation at the hands of these French folk. And just that like sliver of hope that she had is just replaced with this just dehumanizing alienation. And I also want to point out that the French title of the film, it's in my opinion actually a lot more effective. It translates to the black girl of dot 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 with like an ellipses. And I think that's a better title because it further explores this concept of identity, because it can indicate where someone's from, but it can also denote being somebody's property, right? So there's a lot to pull from there. There's also just some fantastic visual metaphors throughout the film that I'm not going to spoil. But yeah, overall, just an incredible film that wasn't afraid to tackle the effects of racism and colonialism at the time. And it's just a gripping watch. And like I said, it's just either under or over an hour. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, that's my second pick.
That sounds like a very quietly devastating movie.
It is. It is.
It sounds really good though. I'd love to check it out. I love things,
Definitely.
especially for the 60s. I feel like that's pretty impressive to have done something that like comments on the colonialism, just because people are, I mean, it's the 60s, people were still very racist. So, I
Right.
mean,
And also just
like
like the
openly.
connection
So,
between Dakar and France too, to just be like, this is
hmm
what I'm making. This
yeah,
stuff is still affecting the world. Like,
yeah, yeah,
have at
totally.
it.
I mean, it's still out there.
Exactly. And then
Um,
if you're gonna watch that, watch Mandabi as well, because that one's in
mhm,
color and it's just also visually striking, where this one's in black and white. I mean, it's also beautiful, but just the
mhm.
differences in the two are great. So yeah, they're
Is
both
that
on
another feature or
Criterion.
is that a short?
That's a feature.
Oh, okay, cool.
There's an entire collection on the Criterion channel of his films.
Oh,
So
okay, cool. Yeah, I'll have to check him out. It sounds awesome.
yeah, floor is yours for the next one.
All right, so this one, I think I'm leaning into some territory that I don't know that you've picked this movie, but I know that you could probably talk about it at length because I'm pretty sure the recommendation came from you. Sexy
Oh,
Beast.
oh, Jonathan Glazer,
Yeah,
great film.
yeah. So I, I mean, I can't believe how long his career's been for how
Hmm.
like how few like features he's done. I saw Under the Skin whenever it came out, and then I just
Hmm.
watched like
Same.
Zone of Interest and was like, yeah, this movie's amazing.
Hmm.
Um, and then yeah, I went back and watched Sexy Beast, which I thought the premise of it sounded a little bit boring. I'm like, I find it very difficult to like get into any kind of gangster movie. It's their, it's like a genre
Oh,
that's kind of been done out. Gangster, like heist, like I don't know. It's a little bit. It feels a little bit tired sometimes. There's been, I mean, and it's been a
fair.
while since that movie came out, but yeah, I was, immediately my worries were kind of assuaged when the boulder came like rolling down the hill into the
Yeah.
fucking pool. It's like,
In what, the first act? Like,
it's no, it's like it's like right after the opening credits, or maybe
yeah,
during
yeah.
the opening credits. I was like, man, what is going to happen here? And so it goes from like being a fairly straightforward, like, hanging out at the Mediterranean, like retired
Hmm.
gangster thing, into just like this, like Ben Kingsley comes in psychotic, and I have no idea what's going to happen at any point in time, despite how like small the movie was. So yeah, just like the way that it rode the tension. And probably my favorite part of it was it had these weird like cutaways to this like bunny guy with an Uzi, like kind of like a B-roll on like a, like thugged out Donnie Darko thing. Like I didn't know, it had no bearing on the movie at all. It never connected to kind of like the main plot, but it was so sick and it totally worked. Like I don't know why. And that's kind of what I meant about like taking risks. Like there was no
Yeah.
reason, they could have easily cut that from the movie and it would have been way safer. But I love that they had that there. It just kind of, I felt like it made it feel a little bit more loose, like a little bit less
Mm.
constrained to like to maybe like that genre again that like feels a little bit played out sometimes. It was like punk. I don't know. It was sick as fuck. I love that movie. And then The Heist
Me too.
was awesome. A movie that I left off the list, but put on my honorable mentions was Thief. And I thought that this was
Nice.
another low budget heist movie that was awesome because especially like post, you know, Ocean's 11 and like I watched Italian Job a bunch as a kid, but like these like hyper complicated, like there's 20 moving pieces and like all these cars and we get on this and then do this. Like both these movies and especially Sexy Beast, they're like we're going to find a way to break into the vault and take everything and then leave. Like we're going to go and like flood this thing and drill through the wall, then the water pressure, and we're going to like be like the heist being in scuba gear and like pulling diamonds out of drawers. So sick.
So
Loved it.
good. I love that film. I think I watched it for the first time either this year or the end of last year. It was on the Criterion channel and it was leaving, so I watched it like right before it left. And yeah, that's like my favorite Ben Kingsley role. He is insane. Like he is on another planet in that movie.
Yeah, what I feel like they didn't like even respect his character necessarily, or like he had like some role that kind of like continued to develop where you expect him to be this like enforcer, but then they like kick him out and like tell him to go home. But then he won't like he's just like a weird, he's such a weird guy, and I'm not even sure that he was like necessarily important in like the overarching hierarchy of the gang, but like
But he
was
acted like
absolutely
it.
determined to stir shit up to like the full
Abs-
extent possible.
Oh, he was amazing. I'm trying to think. There's an Italian movie I'm curious if you saw that's also because you bring up the concept of having a heist film, but having it be very simple. And this one
Mhm.
it's from the 50s. It's an Italian film. Oh my God, humor me for a second. It's on the
Yeah, take your
Criterion
time.
channel. Is it coming to you if I say Italian heist movie from the 50s, or is that just not,
Mm, no.
it's not working? Okay, hold
Sorry.
on, hold on.
Yeah,
Country, Italy. It's a stupid name, or it's not a stupid name. It's a good name for film, but like I just
but
can't
it's in
think of it right
Italian, so I
now.
have no idea what they're
Ah,
saying.
here it is. Big Deal on Madonna Street from 1958. Ring a
And no,
bell?
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, so that one's on Criterion as well. It's 106 minutes. It's incredible. It's again just like a heist film, but it's also kind of a comedy too. Like nothing really goes well. And yeah, highly recommend that one as well.
Yeah, I feel like Sexy Beast actually reads really well as a comedy.
Oh yeah,
Kind of.
absolutely.
I mean, like,
And that's my favorite, like just gangsters messing up. Like that's just so much
yeah,
fun to watch.
yeah, it's just a mess. Like, no one's like
Just
at the end they
ass.
just like dump them on the street and they're like, all right, like your payment is you're out. That's it's just like such a
Exactly.
weirdly anticlimactic movie. Like,
I love it so much. Oh, I also love the poster as well. That's kind of what attracted me to it initially.
yeah, I thought it was gonna be like an erotic thriller, and it's absolutely not that.
Absolutely not. Okay, well, I'm gonna go next. What are we at? Number three now?
We're
Yeah.
yeah, that was my second.
Yeah, so we're number three. Okay, so I'm gonna go with a movie I've talked about online already many times, but I don't even care because it's just such a bold feature film debut by someone who had zero filmmaking experience, mind you, and that's Agnes Varda's La Pointe Courte from 1955, which is also considered by many the first film of the French New Wave movement. So pretty
Oh,
important stuff, not
yeah.
to mention the fact that it's the first film of this movement that was done by a woman in a space that was literally dominated by men. I can't think of another female filmmaker during the French New Wave. Can you? Like,
No.
no. Exactly. So, yeah, so hugely influential stuff. La Pointe Court. Let me explain it, or the plot, first of all. It's kind of divided, the story is divided into two things that you're watching. So, on one hand, you have this married couple. I don't even think we know their names, but they're young and they found themselves in La Pointe Court, which is a young man's hometown. It's like a seaside town. And his wife is bored and she's unhappy with their marriage. And so they're there and we watch them try to fix their problems. So that's going on one hand. And then at the same time, we're also watching the locals in this village and just their trials and tribulations of their everyday life. And this is kind of told from like a documentarian's eye, like visually. And it makes sense because, as I mentioned, this was Varda's film debut, but before that, she studied art history and photography. And so that's where her background came. She worked as a photojournalist as well. So, like, of course, she'd be able to approach things with this documentary feel, right? And then she'd later go on and make some phenomenal documentaries of her own. So, yeah, I love this film. It's a gorgeous movie visually. And again, her background really comes into play here with just how she's able to craft these stunning images. Plus, I don't know if you've heard me geeking out about this on social media. You probably have, maybe.
Probably.
It's like my favorite fun fact, but you know that shot in Ingmar Bergman's Persona, like the iconic double portrait of Lee Woolman and Bibi Anderson?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you see the same thing here, the exact same composition, which I think is so cool because this came out in 1955, so years before Bergman's.
Right.
Exact same shot, super cool. So yeah, really fantastic film. It's just a timeless and wonderful exploration of life's everyday moments. And Varda herself said that she chose to tackle this subject of the married couple because she felt like people never pay attention to those moments where, like, those in between moments where people no longer love one another quite enough. And this movie really captures that so well because there aren't any crazy blowouts or crazy drama. It's just day-to-day life and the little things that grow to be bigger problems if you let them fester long enough. But yeah, impressive debut. Holy shit.
Yeah, the slow burn, the tension. She is one of the directors I still have to like go down the path of exploring.
It's so much fun.
Yeah, Vagabond and all her other works. But yeah, that's probably next up on my list, I guess. Now that you've recommended it.
Tons of her movies are on the Criterion channel. My favorite is Cleo from 5 to 7. Le Bonheur is also really good. That one's really, really colorful. Vagabond I liked, but I like the other ones more. But yeah, that's a great starting point. She also has some phenomenal documentaries on the channel as well. So homework.
Lots to check out.
Yes. What's your next pick?
Which is great. My next pick is one that I watched recently. Another woman director, Ratcatcher by Lynn Ramsey.
Yep.
So I didn't really know what to expect. I feel like this movie, I actually didn't know when it was shot. It has one of those classic posters that kind of like is lost in time. Like, is this from the 60s? Is this from the 70s? Like, what's the deal? I think it was from the 80s or 90s, though. It was more recent than I had imagined. Yeah, I might have to fact check that one.
No, you're good.
But
99.
Yeah, 99. Yeah, so it's like fairly recent, which I had thought that it was a lot older. It kind of has a similar cover, I think, to like 400 Blows or something. Or I had imagined it as being similar, maybe in my mind. But
his face looks really similar to the actor from 400 Blows in the cover.
Did you see it?
No, I have. That's Ratcatcher's been on my list. I've seen, I think, 3 or 4 of her other movies. I think 3, but not that one. Not yet.
Yeah, I actually just watched We Need to Talk About Kevin just because I had wanted to see like another one of her movies before I spoke about her first one.
Dude, watch Morven Callor. I'll tell you later.
Okay,
Explain this first.
Another show. Another time.
Yeah.
So Ratcatcher is about this like kid, I think in Glasgow or somewhere in Scotland, very poor. And he's like playing with his friend down by the river, and his friend like gets bumped into the water and drowns. And that's how the movie starts. And it's like, Jesus. And you're like kind of waiting for the other foot to drop for the next like 20 minutes as like, you know, it plays out very slowly and it's kind of like away from the drama. But, you know, you hear his mother like crying in the distance as she like discovers the body and like all this kind of like panic happening around it, and then it just kind of like fades away and you only stay with the kid as well, and it's just like, okay, like I feel like that was supposed to be the movie, but it's not, and it all it does is like set the tone for kind of the rest of what happens, which is just this like, it's this early childhood exploration, kind of like living on the outskirts of society. I don't know how personal this movie was. I'm imagining it's very personal to Lynn Ramsey, but like the child acting and like the direction for the children was like incredible. The performances were like complete, and like these are younger kids. It's not like teenagers or like preteens. I think the kid is like probably 8 years old.
Whoa.
And a lot of the cast is quite young, but it's a very like quiet and intimate movie that I feel like does a great job of like walking this fine line between like something like fantastic and something tragic. So like the way that the kid explores the world, like you could tell there's this like fascination and like you know, oh my God, like there's all these things going on. He's kind of like running around and exploring a lot. But there's like constantly just like in the back of your head, you can't stop thinking about like this kid that drowned, or like how every interaction he has is like an overwhelmingly negative experience, but he just like kind of keeps going and keeps dreaming. And like there, you know, there's like a scene where he runs away to the countryside and he finds this abandoned house and like imagines what it would be like to live in like a real house like that. And it's like it's really devastating, but it's so innocent at the same time. So yeah, I was totally floored, you know, just crying by the time it was over. But really, really strong one. Especially, yeah, to
Wow.
just like to have your movie carried by like a basically silent main character. Like he doesn't really talk much. It's very lonely as far as like it's just him. Beautifully shot. Yeah, strong debut. And I mean, I guess it would go on to kind of like characterize at least the other movie I saw, which is also very sad and has to do a lot with
Hmm.
kids. But yeah, incredible movie.
Wow. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that. I mean, that's been on my watch list for ages. I don't know why I keep putting it off, but like after hearing you talk about it, I absolutely want to see it. And it honestly, like when you're describing how sad it is, I'm like, oh, that's a through line in her work, absolutely. Because
Yeah.
Morvin Callar as well, which is my favorite of hers from what I've seen, that's also devastating. That also opens with a death. So
Hmm.
I mean, and it's kind of the same concept of, I mean, I haven't seen Ratcatcher, but the way you're describing it, it's a similar concept of like taking a tragedy and the movie's like undoubtedly devastating, but then at the same time, it's also weirdly uplifting as well. Like I can't
Yeah.
even really know how to explain it, but it's like
Yeah.
this
No,
weird
it's
blend.
yeah, no, that's kind of like what it is. There's another really good scene where this kid gets like a rat. It's like his pet rat, I think. And he's
Mhm.
like showing it off to like these other kids and they want to take it and like kill it because it's a really cruel world. Yeah.
Oh God.
And like eventually he gets away. I think the kid like maybe helps him get away because they were like talking about, oh, like can the rat fly? Because they were like throwing it around or whatever. And he runs away with the rat and then he goes upstairs and he ties the rat to a balloon and he like lets it out the window. He's like, look, it could fly. And it's like this beautiful image of this like rat just kind of like going up into the sky tied to this balloon, kind of like the sad version of Up or something. But
Oh my God.
um,
Up is already sad.
yeah, so like you know this rat that's like this kid's pet, like maybe this kid doesn't even understand like what's gonna happen to the rat or what he's like condemned this like small creature to, but
I'm
it,
so
it has this
sad
like
for the
quiet
rat.
childlike innocence amidst this like kind of like violent death that is like will you know eventually come to this rat. So
Oh God.
it does kind of have that quality. It was very interesting though. I thought it showed like a
Wow.
very strong control of like emotion.
Hmm.
Very
Cool. I'm
balanced.
definitely gonna check that out. RIP
Hmm.
to the rat. I
Yeah,
think that's
R.I.P.
also on the Criterion channel, so that's super easy
Hmm.
for me to find. And you definitely watch Morvin Callar.
Yeah,
And then there's another one with Joaquin Phoenix. What's it called? You Were Never Really Here. That's also a
right.
good one.
Yes. Yeah, we'll have to send each other a full list by the time we're done here.
Absolutely. Next up for me, I'm gonna go with. I keep saying I'm gonna go for every single one. Ugh, anyways, I'm gonna go with Toshio Matsumoto's Funeral Parade of Roses from 1969. Have you seen this one?
I have not.
Oh boy, it's delightful. Definitely check it out. This film is just incredible. It's a part of the Japanese New Wave movement, and I've chatted in length about the Japanese New Wave movement in my Tokyo Drifter episodes. So if you have an interest
Oh,
in that,
nice.
I'll point you in that direction.
Hmm.
But yeah, Funeral Parade of Roses, directorial feature debut by Matsumoto. He did short films before this. And yeah, when he was still a student, he was inspired by both Italian neorealism with its more, I guess, realistic or documentary like approach. But he was also really inspired by avant garde cinema. And so he wanted to find a way to fuse both of those together somehow. And in an interview once, he said, quote, I wrote this down because it's a long one. Both were extremely fascinating to me, but that's where problems arose. Although I found the freedom of avant garde's uninhibited, imaginative world extremely attractive, it had a tendency to get stuck in a closed world. Documentaries, on the other hand, while intensely related to reality, would not really thoroughly address internal mental states and were so dependent upon their temporal contexts, they would look old fashioned if this context changed. I wonder whether the point of collision made the limitations and strong points of the two forms could not pose a new set of topics for cinema. So basically, he wanted to combine the two. And
He
why am
could.
I saying, yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And so why am I saying all of this? Because he combines both art films and a more documentarian approach in Funeral Parade of Roses, and he does it so well. The movie is a queer loose adaptation of the myth of Oedipus, but it transports his story into the underground gay scene in Tokyo in the 1960s. And kind of similar to La Pointe Courte, you have two things going on at once. So the major part of the film revolves around Eddie, who's a gender non-conforming hostess at this Tokyo gay bar, and she's sleeping with the club owner Gonda. And the problem here is that he's in a relationship with Lita, who's the madame or lead girl of the bar. And Gonda promises to make Eddie the new lead. So we watch their rivalry. We get flashback sequences and just like look at their day-to-day lives. And then we also get interjections as another part of the film. So that second half. And these ones are shot in that documentary style, where many of the film's cast are interviewed about their sexuality and gender identity. And this is just so ahead of its time. It's incredible. For further reading, for those of you interested, there's a wonderful article written by Sarah Cleary for BFI titled Why Funeral Parade of Roses is a Landmark of Japanese Queer Cinema. And in there, she writes that she would actually describe the characters of Eddie and Lita as trans feminine. And again, to circle back to the year this came out, 1969, like just to have this beautiful and sympathetic representation of queer and trans folk, it's fantastic to see. It's a film that refuses to conform to any sort of conventional gender roles. And again, Japan, 1960s. And I should also mention, because people do bring it up, that it's said, allegedly, that Funeral Parade of Roses also served as inspiration for Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange, which came out in 71. So shortly after this, kind of. And yeah, there's like some inspiration, I think, like the sped up montages to classical music, some of the art direction, even like the false eyelashes that our protagonists wear. But I don't know, that's kind of as far as I saw any sort of inspiration between the two. But I think that Funeral Parade of Roses, it's just glorious in its own right. It should stand on its own. It's also just gorgeous to watch. You get these like sped up montages, like I said, freeze frames, texts flashing across the screen, just like sudden cuts, a lot of it borrowed from the French New Wave movement as well, yet it's bolder and it's unapologetically tackling themes with such force, even more so than the French New Wave. So I love this one and I love recommending it to people.
Great title.
Right?
Great setting.
Right?
I love the quote that you gave. Did you memorize that? That was
no, I had it written down.
I was like, damn, you really came ready.
Thank you.
That sounds awesome. I've been watching Tokyo Vice, and it's like sounds like it's kind of
the show.
Yes.
Is it HBO?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great show.
Yeah, I could talk about that at length as well, but
another episode.
Yeah, another episode.
Yeah, watch this. I think it's on YouTube. Yeah, I think so. But I would love to get a physical copy myself because it's just
my god. It's from the 60s?
69.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Love that. Such a great era for Japan.
I agree, absolutely. And again, just to like tackle all of this stuff with so much force at a time when like I don't know how open people were to, gender non-conforming folks in the 1960s in Japan. So
yeah,
it's just really loving.
It's very interesting to see how those kinds of topics are like addressed.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite trivia I don't know, like I don't even know if this counts as like a trivia fact, but in like the 1950s, Ed Wood came out with Glenn or Glenda.
I haven't seen that.
So, I mean, you probably know who Ed Wood is, right?
Yeah.
I think that actually might have been a directorial debut, funny enough, but that movie's like all about guys who like cross-dress. And it basically like almost like a public service announcement. The way the movie is, it kind of like takes you through vignettes and like explains them as they go along. I'm like, wow, this is like really sensitive and like intelligent representation of this thing that was probably extremely uncommon. And then I later found out that Ed Wood was a cross-dresser, so it kind of like made sense. It was just like him making a movie that's like, guys, it's all good.
So
What I'm
I'm
doing
trying
is
to
not
figure out where it's
strange or
on.
anything. But
Yeah.
I was kind of like shocked because it's so old, and it was like, oh yeah, like I feel like this is a lot of the same language people use today.
Hmm.
It was very non-prejudicial, which was nice. But
Yeah,
yes,
1953. I'm looking at it right now. That's
yeah, not
crazy.
like a
That's so
great
early.
movie, but it was just like a very interesting thing to watch from that
Hmm.
era that was on those topics.
Interesting. Cool. Well, I just added that to my ever-growing list as well. So,
It's good to
what's
watch
next
Ed
for you?
Wood, you know. So my next one, I suspect, is your final one.
Ooh. Can I
Maybe,
guess?
yeah,
Eraserhead.
yes,
I'm so good at these guessing games. No,
yeah,
I knew you were gonna pick that, so I had it as an honorable mention. So,
right.
floor is yours.
Yeah, I also tried to avoid things that I felt like I heard you talk about, but I wasn't gonna. I knew we could talk about this one for an entire
Of
episode anyway.
course, of
So
course.
where do I begin with Eraserhead? When I first started, so like when I first started getting into movies, I was like, maybe like 13 or 14. Like as far as like seeking things out and like watching directors, David Lynch was one that I kind of came around to, and like immediately was just like transfixed. Like the way he makes a movie is like the way he approaches it is so different. I feel from most other people because he has like such a strange background. I think I watched like Blue Velvet first, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" And then I went and I watched. I remember I watched Eraserhead with my mom. I was like, "Mom, I really want to watch this movie. Let's throw this DVD." And it's just like even the opening sequence where it's just like crawling through like some strange planet for like
Yeah.
5 minutes. What the fuck am I watching?
Yeah.
And it's all just like these quiet long shots of like some guy who's like stressed. I don't know. We don't really know anything about him. Everything's uncomfortable and strange and grating and awful. And it's honestly very difficult to watch. I think I've like
Yeah.
maybe seen it in its entirety like one time, but I will never forget it. It's always going to be like among the movies that I'll talk about for the rest of my life. Yeah, again, like I don't even know what to say about this movie. I think that as far as like a director's debut is concerned, one of the most psychotic performances by any man. Not within the movie, but just like David Lynch trying to pull this thing together. He
Hmm.
moved from Philly to California to be part of the first class of AFI. And somewhere in there, he was given 10 grand, which is, I mean, by today's standards, literally nothing. That's like a low budget music video. Back then, I'm sure it wasn't much either, to produce like a short, I think, and that he was allowed to use
Hmm.
like the AFI a lot or whatever. So he converted this barn or shed or whatever into the set for Eraserhead and lived there for a good portion of the 5 years it took him to make this movie.
Yes.
Which, if nothing, just kind of speaks to his dedication. He had like no idea what it was going to be while he was making it. Who's that actor again?
Oh
Who
my God, why can't I think of the name right now? Because he's in all of his stuff.
He's in all his
He's
stuff.
like, well, not all, but like Jack Fisk, Jack Fisk, Jack Fisk,
Yes.
Jack
Did you?
Fisk.
Yeah. Did you get that before you looked it up?
Yeah, I got that before I looked it
Nice.
up. I literally
Nice.
unlocked my phone and it came to
Yeah. So yeah, Flex.
me.
He met him. I don't think they said much to each other, but Jack Fisk said he was down to work with David Lynch because he liked his car or something. Like he thought he was a
Hmm.
weirdo, but he liked his car, and he stuck it out for 5 years shooting this like insane art movie
Yeah.
that existed outside of like any contemporary context. And when it came out, it was basically a failure with like most
Yep.
people obviously not liking it. Critically did not do well. But Mel Gibson, or not Mel Gibson, sorry, Mel Brooks, very different, very strange mistake to make. Whoops. Oh, I'm canceled.
Oh, I love that.
But Mel Brooks saw the movie and was like, I love this guy, and
Yeah.
brought him on to direct Elephant Man, which was a beautiful movie. I don't know if there are two movies within his catalog that are any more different than Eraserhead and Elephant Man,
It's true.
except for maybe like A Straight Story or something. But
Also, I messed up the name. It wasn't Jack Fisk, it was Jack Nance. So,
oh, everyone's
rewinding my
messing up. Yeah,
flex.
yeah, we're gonna have to like scrub over the audio for the
No, but
Mel Gibson and the Jack
Jack
areas.
Fisk was actually David Lynch's production designer. He's also a director. So
Was
he
he
was in
credited
it also. Who's he credited
j-
as in the movie?
as that for Eraserhead? Because like the thing about Eraserhead is he would just sit in there and like make all the stuff himself.
He was the
I'm sure
man
over the
in the
course of
planet.
5 he was what, sorry?
The man in the planet.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. Just insane. And then later he would make Dune. Actually, when, like based on how he had like worked on Eraserhead, he went into Elephant Man trying to like make the head shape
Hmm.
with literally no professional background in doing that kind of thing just because like the last movie he made was basically all by his hands. So I think as far as
Crazy.
like a debut is concerned and like someone who earned their success, I don't know that there's anyone that really compares to that. This came out in the 70s and it was harder to make movies back then than it is now. It took him 5 years. He had no money to do it and he just stuck with it, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah, this is one of my favorite directorial debuts as well. It went on my honorable mentions list, but for the exact same reasons that you just listed as well, just to have the guts to do this. And again, as you were saying, for 5 years when people were telling him, like, what are you doing? So many people would have given up, but he just stayed true to his freaky self. And it just set the stage for all the other freaky stuff that he would
no
go
one
to
no one
do.
could match his freak back then.
It's so true. Also, all this information, did this come from the book of yours that I still own?
Yeah,
Because that's where I learned
at
it
least at
from.
least partially. I've like consumed pretty much everything to do with David Lynch's like come up, especially
Yeah.
Eraserhead.
I still got to get that book back to you. Maybe once you come into
Yeah,
town
maybe.
next month.
Some more
Okay, but
emotional.
lastly, for me, drum roll. Do you want to guess which filmmaker I went with?
No, it's gonna take up too much dead air. I don't
Okay,
know.
fair, 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 fair. I went with Andrei Tarkovsky.
Okay.
Yeah, kind of predictable. But I'm gonna go with his 1962 feature film debut, Ivan's Childhood. Or
Hmm.
obviously, it's a feature film debut. That's what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just baffling to me that this was his debut or feature debut, because a mere 2 years before this, he completed his diploma film, The Steamroller and the Violin, which, if you haven't seen, definitely check it out. It's 46 minutes long. And it's also just like bananas that was, oh no, biggie, that's my diploma film.
Right.
It's so well done. But anyway, Ivan's Childhood, it's a World War II drama based on a 1957 short story called Ivan. And the film tells the story of a 12-year-old orphan, Ivan. His parents were killed by invading German forces, and we basically follow his experience during the war. He's working for the Soviet army as a scout. And so he's being sent on these very risky jobs. And we watch his life over the course of, I believe it's 2 days. And the soldiers he's working with want to send him away to a military school because that's safer than the front lines of war. But Ivan's like, no, I want to be treated as an equal. I want to continue my espionage, if you will. And that's kind of all I'm going to say. And with this film, Tarkovsky said he wanted to present all of the hate that he had of war. He also chose to do so with a child protagonist because that's the biggest contrast to war. And the main goal of Ivan's Childhood was to see whether or not he had it in himself to become a filmmaker. And by golly, he most certainly did. We also see elements here that would later blossom into becoming his trademarks. Certain imagery like shallow water being used, or really expressionistic camera work and angles, the concept of trance-like visions, and so on and so forth. And to me, it's really fascinating to see these seeds being planted, all the while, the entire time, making this film that just had so many hurdles in it itself. Tarkovsky notably replaced another director on this who spent most of the budget. And although Tarkovsky didn't carry over these financial losses when he took over, there's just no doubt in my mind that he must have felt this great, great pressure as a newcomer, again, feature film debut, to not mess this up after someone else almost did, you know? So he also notably clashed with the writer of the short story because the writer wanted him to inject more battle sequences and make it like a real war film. And
Hmm.
Tarkovsky was like, no, I'm not doing that. And instead, he decided to add more dreamlike elements, change it more into this poetic cinema, which of course he becomes so well known for, versus having a straight out war movie. And I think that's really cool. The result is just remarkable for a feature film debut. And the ending, I'm not going to spoil, but it's so heartbreaking, so melancholy. and just this jarring reality that Tarkovsky jolts you back to as he cuts to black. So I'm going off about this. Have you seen Ivan's Childhood, Declan?
No, I haven't. It's reminding
Oh.
me of like Come and See or some other kind of like war,
This
childhood
is like
war.
poetic Come and See. It's,
Okay.
yeah, because Come and See is like you watch Come and See and you're like,
Pretty
holy shit,
visceral.
I'm miserable for the next month.
Right.
Where this isn't really like that.
Hmm.
But yeah, it put him on the map. I think he won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival. Was it a selected entry for the Oscars? I don't think so, but I think it was the Soviet entry. It just didn't get accepted as a nominee. But
Right.
regardless, high praises all around. He went on to inspire so many notable filmmakers as well. You have Kieslowski, you have Benders.
Hmm.
Actually, notably, Ingmar Bergman, when he watched Ivan's Childhood, he dubbed Tarkovsky the greatest filmmaker. So, I mean, you're doing something right if Bergman's singing your praises. But yeah, that's my final pick. So over to you.
Yeah. So for my last one, I kind of wanted to talk about movies that don't get talked about enough, in
Okay.
my opinion. The movie I picked was Anchorman by Adam McKay.
I love that. That was
So
so
my,
unexpected.
yeah, well, and that's the thing is like I feel like a lot of the time when people discuss movies in like any kind of serious context, everyone wants to talk about, like auteurs or like, some the eras. And I'm like, I just feel like what I really wanted to pick was Zoolander, but it wasn't Ben Stiller's first. But comedies, and I don't know, I feel like maybe they've gone by the wayside, maybe because of all the like people kind of like dismiss them very quickly.
Hmm.
Anchorman is like a phenomenal movie. It's well written, it's well shot. Every scene is like super fun. It hits all the like emotional beats that you'd kind of want out of something. And every time you bring it up, someone is gonna like share their favorite quote with you, which is true for a lot of comedies as well. But I feel like
Hmm.
they're just like they just don't get the like cinematic respect that I think they deserve. This is my personal this is
I
my
love it. I
my
love it.
Rome.
My
My
bro.
ancient Rome. The comedy movies need more respect. Need to put some respect on them.
It's true.
But yeah, Anchorman. I grew up watching all the like Will Ferrell stuff. I saw Talladega Nights twice in theaters. Once with my mom, and then my mom made me take my dad to go see it because he's from Indiana, and he ate it up. We watched Step Brothers when that came out. My brother was
Hmm.
definitely too young, but we still went. And yeah, Anchorman is kind of where it all started. So Adam McKay started, I think, as he directed a couple episodes of Saturday Night Live. I'm assuming he was
Mm.
also a writer there.
Hmm.
And this was like the first thing that came out of that, which a lot of great movies came out of Saturday Night Live as well. Like, the Blues Brothers. I don't know. I was talking about MacGruber the other day. That's like one of the funniest movies ever.
Love.
But yeah, Anchorman, it's kind of like like a flash, lightning in a bottle in a weird way. Will Ferrell started his career as a reporter. He started his career. Yeah, he went to college and like got some
What?
media degree and started out as like a low budget whatever like cable TV reporter. Or he reported on
Stop.
sports or something before he got into comedy. So like this is kind of like him stepping back into that space
I had no
and obviously
idea.
just like nailing it to the point that like that character, like he goes and comments on things as like Ron Burgundy. Like he'll go into like a sports thing or like whatever, and it's like, oh, we have Ron Burgundy here as like color commentary or whatever. So like it created so much life outside of what it is, and it's like so well beloved and I think that to have that, even like to have that, so that love that's like so universal,
Hmm.
especially off like your first movie. There's so many great, like remember when Jack Black like takes his dog and like drop kicks him off a bridge like he's got like the conchi blows and like it's so fucking good.
It
And
is.
yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about it other than like, yeah, this is where I'm hanging my hat. I think people need to like respect comedy more because those movies do exactly what they intend to do. You don't have to have a like
Absolutely.
lengthy discussion about like whether it's like this or what the person intended. Like they intended to make you laugh and it worked.
And it
And
worked.
it sticks with you.
Hmm. I love Anchorman. I mean, that's up there for me in terms of comedies that came out from that period, like Superbad, which is my favorite, and I
Yeah.
adore it. But Anchorman's on that level for me. It's so funny. And these are comedies that I feel like just aren't gonna get made anymore. Like we're so far gone past these early 2000s or mid 2000s comedies, which is a shame because they're the ones that make me laugh so hard.
Yeah, totally. It does feel like it's kind of dead now. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious what the comeback will be exactly. I thought Barbie was a comedy. That was like probably the
Yeah.
biggest budget comedy of the last few years.
And
But
it
like
was
generally,
funny.
yeah, no, it was amazing. I've seen it
Mm-hmm.
twice, and I both times I ended, I was like, this movie was incredible. I love it. Super funny
Yay.
and
Yeah.
heartfelt.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I guess there's just like maybe less of a market for it. Or I mean, there was also, it's worth mentioning, a lot of awful comedies from that same era
That
where
is
just
true.
it was kind of like how horror, they just pump them out and like see what lands. I feel like they were doing that with comedy as well, which
Absolutely.
it kind of like muddies the water a little bit because like Adam McKay was actually making great movies that were comedies.
Mm-hmm.
Same with like, yeah, Superbad is a great movie that is a comedy.
God, I love it so much.
So yeah, maybe they'll make a
Those are the,
comeback. That's gonna be my life's ambition, is just to make comedies sick
it's on
again.
you.
Make
It's on you,
cinematic
Declan.
comedies.
You
I'll do
gotta
it.
do it.
I'm happy to step up to the plate on that one.
Take the, I was gonna say take the fork. No, take the, I
The
can't, I don't
fork.
even know what I'm saying. The fork. Take the fork.
Take the fork and do it. Eat it up.
Okay. Okay. Well, those were our what? Those were our five. I guess we can do some honorable mentions.
Yeah.
I foolishly only had three
Hmm.
planned, and one of them was Eraserhead, which you already talked about.
Yeah.
So I guess Eraserhead.
Yeah.
I'm
Great movie.
also gonna mention Francois Truffaut's The 400 Blows from
Hmm.
1959. I chatted about this on my coming of age episode with George, so I'm not
Hmm.
gonna rehash all of that again. Wow, I'm so
Yeah.
underprepared. So yeah, Eraserhead, 400 Blows. Oh, and then lastly, I'm gonna go with Satyajit Ray's Pather Panchali from 1955. I'm probably going to do an entire episode on Ray just
Hmm.
because I love his work so much. And with Pather Panchali, which is the first entry in his Apu trilogy, highly suggest that for everybody. You just get this like breathtaking poeticism. The use of nature is stunning. Ray's shooting style is very uncomplicated yet striking.
Hmm.
Uses minimal pans. You just see day to day life, and it's in India, and it's beautiful. You just soak in each frame. So yeah, those are my three honorable mentions. What about you, Declan?
I have a few. I have a few.
Please save me.
One that I was planning on talking about, I just rewatched, Kids.
Oh, Harmony. No, was that Harmony Korine?
Larry Clark.
Larry
Harmony
Clark,
Korine
but
wrote it as a
yeah, the
19-year
script.
old, and it was Larry Clark's first movie.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Great
recently
film.
watched Bully for the first time. I still have to see like Ken Park and whatever else he's done, but yeah, I felt like Kids, controversial take, should be shown in high school as like a sex ed PSA. That's kind of like the vibe that I got from it. I know that it's like pretty, it has like a lot of other stuff going on, but I feel like
Yeah,
it does a great job. It is a cautionary tale. The whole movie is like a cautionary tale,
you're not wrong.
but it kind of lives in this like teenage space that I feel like is very, I mean, it is very authentic, right? A lot of these kids
Mm-hmm.
were skaters, and it wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
you know, set up in the way that you'd expect a movie to be. Like the scenes were kind of free flowing, and you're just kind of like capturing these moments,
Hmm.
which I thought was really impressive, because to shoot a scene that feels informal but still natural, just like from a craft perspective, is difficult, right? Like usually, like if you look at something like Dave Fincher, all
Mm-hmm.
of his stuff is like hyper composed, like it's like basically on a metronome, like you know what's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen, like pop pop pop. But Kids is like very free flowing. It feels like the camera's just like among these kids, and you're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
along for the ride with them. And it's similar to Bully as well, where like he he also is able to present the way these kids live in non-judgmental or preachy way,
Yeah.
right? Like clearly these kids are, I mean, a lot of them are pretty rough, scummy, sometimes awful people. But it's not like, oh, look at how bad this guy is. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is life. And I think to
But
have
yeah,
that kind of like gentle touch was really awesome.
I love that film.
I also have Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Nice.
I feel like Guy Ritchie coasted off that movie like almost his entire career. Like they gave
Yeah.
him more money to basically do it again with Snatch, and then they're like, okay, well, you're a made man now. But it was so original and so inventive and so cool. Yeah, probably most like movie bros would put that in their top 5, and like for pretty good
Hmm.
reason. It's just like if that movie just crushes. It's so sick.
It is. I agree.
I mentioned it earlier, but Thief, which I think you
Yes.
recommended originally,
God, I love Thief.
very interesting to see lower budget Michael Mann movie, since like he's kind of known for like making the biggest movies,
Hmm.
but it just still has that like bravado and kind of like gutsiness that his movies kind of like came to be described by.
That's still my favorite of his. I adore Thief.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has like a lot of restraint. I mean, it feels like restraint probably just because it's cheaper than the other ones, but just goes to show he's an effective filmmaker. House of a
Absolutely.
Thousand Corpses.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think I have that somewhere here, actually, on physical. But yeah, great pick.
It yeah, just came out like it's very like fully realized. Rob Zombie kind of like already, I mean, he's obviously had a lot of like other stuff going on, but like his world was like fully formed right out the gates, and it's
Totally.
very entertaining.
I like that movie. People don't really like him much, and like Fair, some of his later work, I'm like, not the best,
Hmm.
but I do like that film a lot.
I feel like those people need to get over themselves because these movies are really fun.
They set out to do what they set out to do,
Yeah,
basically.
I don't know, and they're great at that. Like they're very entertaining, and they just like my eyes just like eat up everything that, like all the set deck and like the way the camera moves and like the characters. I'm like,
Hmm.
yeah, this is like insane. I love this.
Hmm. This is
It's like
such a wild list of your honorable mentions. I love it. It's just all over
well,
the place.
yeah, I wanted to stay like kind of contemporary just to like keep it, I don't know, more like whatever.
I love
Moving on.
it.
Hereditary, which
Great.
I also feel like is something that's like so talked about that it like could not be something that I'd use on my main list, but
Hmm.
it's kind of like, yeah, self-evident at this point. Ari Aster is like one of the best voices in movies
Hmm.
working. And then the last one was my best friend's B-Day, birthday.
I don't know that.
It's Quentin Tarantino's first movie that no one knows about.
What?
Yeah, so he made it when he was like 24 or something, and it's just like all black and white, very cheap.
Oh, I've heard about this, but the name didn't stick with me. Apparently, obviously.
Yeah, no, it's
How
not
long
like
is it?
I think it's over an hour. I think it's probably like an hour 30, hour
Oh,
20 or something. It's not like great or necessarily worth watching. It's more of like a trivia thing and a fun thing. I don't know if he includes it in like his 10 movies or anything.
probably not.
No
I
one ever
wouldn't.
talks about it. Also, he's made like way
Yeah,
more than 10 movies at this
yeah.
point.
Yeah, I've definitely heard of that. Absolutely. I have not seen it. Yeah, it clearly the name didn't even stick for me either, but maybe I will check it out cuz I do like his other stuff, of course. Of
It's
course.
just like a fun thing to bring up because no one ever talks about it, but people always talk about Tarantino. So
Yeah, no, I
it's kind
love
of
that.
like a
So
nerdy little thing.
that's your five. I love those
That's
five.
it. Yeah.
Those are great. I love that you included kids. I actually think I will agree with you that probably should be shown in schools. The reason why, or not the reason why, I don't even know why. It's I'm just connecting it now.
Hmm.
You know, Threads.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was shown in schools in the
Hmm.
UK, albeit it traumatized people. So
Yeah.
I don't know if showing kids would be a good
No,
idea
I
because that
mean,
would
yeah,
also
this is also
traumatize people.
me saying this as a guy who watches tons of movies and is like desensitized to most of what's going on, but I just feel like kids could learn something
It's
from the movie
just
Kid.
it's a lot to learn from that movie. But yeah, I guess that is all we have time for today, unfortunately. It was a pleasure having you on though. Is there anything you want to shout out at all before we wrap?
Not really. I mean, if
Fair.
you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at Doplin. See what I'm up to. Got a
Best handle ever.
website, declanadams.com.
Amazing.
It also needs to be updated, but
We'll have all of that in the description.
okay, cool. Then I didn't even need to shout them out.
Well, whatever. We're good. Cool.
Yeah,
Well,
I guess go watch movies. Go to the theaters
yes.
to watch movies, and go to
Yes.
indie theaters. That's the shout out.
I love that. Well, as you said, you're coming to town next month, so we're likely going to have an IRL McFly's Movie House movie watching
Yes,
session, of course.
or go to the Rio or something, or whenever
Ooh,
you come down this way, I'll take you to the Vista in the Los Feliz Theater.
please. I would love that.
Shout out to independent movie theaters.
Yay! Go watch movies,
And
everyone.
go watch movies at your local theater.
Perfect. Well, thanks again for listening, everybody. And Declan, I'm going to see you IRL for McFly's Movie House hang next month.
Yes, I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Bye.